This story is titled, Mom and Dad Forced Me to Pack My Belongings and Move Out, then gave my education savings to my golden sister's boyfriend for his business venture. But now that he's vanished and their income is gone, they're begging me to continue supporting them financially. Hey Reddit, my name is Ryan Lee and I'm 29 years old. Right now, I'm sitting in my pristine office on the 42nd floor of a Chicago skyscraper, watching my parents squirm uncomfortably in the chairs across from my desk. They're waiting for my response to a situation that would have seemed unimaginable just a few years ago. My mom's perfectly manicured nails, once her pride and joy, are now bitten down to the quick. She's drumming them in a regular rhythm on her designer handbag, the same one I'd seen her parade around at country club brunches back when their lives weren't in shambles. My dad, who was once the picture of corporate confidence in his tailored suits, is now wearing a department store blazer with slightly frayed cuffs. The golden Omega watch that had been his pride and joy is conspicuously absent from his wrist. These people sitting before me had thrown me out of their house 5 years ago with nothing but a duffel bag and the clothes on my back. Now they need my help. The irony isn't lost on me. Before everything went sideways, I'd been the golden child. I had straight A's throughout high school, was captain of the debate team, and had been accepted into Cornell's computer engineering program with a partial scholarship. My parents were both successful professionals, my dad in commercial real estate and my mom in corporate law. They had set aside a substantial college fund for me since birth. We lived in an affluent suburb of Illinois, in one of those houses with a 3-car garage and a pool, and hosted neighborhood BBQs every summer. My younger sister Lily was different. While I buried myself in books and coding projects, she floated through life on her looks and charm. She dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it wasn't her scene. Our parents never pushed her the way they pushed me. They called her their free spirit and continued funding her various attempts at finding herself yoga teacher training in Thailand, a failed jewelry-making business, and a 6-month stint as a wannabe Instagram influencer. Then came Victor. I remember the first time Lily brought him home for dinner. He was 33 to her 22, with slicked back hair and the kind of smile car salesmen practice in mirrors. He claimed to be a serial entrepreneur, with multiple successful exits under his belt. That night, he regaled our parents with stories about his latest venture, a revolutionary blockchain-based supply chain solution for sustainable farming. I noticed how he never quite answered direct questions about his previous businesses, but my parents were too enchanted by his charisma to care. The warning signs were there from the start. His designer clothes always had tags still on them. Easy returns, I later learned. He drove a leased Mercedes but lived in a shared apartment. He name-dropped celebrities I later discovered he'd never met. My sister was smitten, and my parents were already planning the wedding after just 3 months of dating. I tried to voice my concerns. I really did. One evening, I showed my father inconsistencies in Victor's business history, no record of his supposed successful companies, and a LinkedIn profile full of connections to known crypto scammers. My dad accused me of being jealous of my sister's happiness. When I approached my mom with evidence that Victor's previous startup had been investigated for fraud in Nevada, she told me I needed to stop being so judgmental. What I didn't know then was that Victor had already started his real magic, not on his business plans, but on my parents' minds and bank accounts. He convinced them that his new venture needed early-stage investors, people who could get in on the ground floor of something revolutionary. He talked about projected returns that would make Warren Buffett blush. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. But even in my worst nightmares, I couldn't have imagined how completely my life would be upended. The day everything changed started like any other. I was preparing for my final semester at Cornell and had no idea that by nightfall, I would be homeless, penniless, and completely cut off from my family. All because I refused to accept that my soon-to-be brother-in-law was anything but a conman with a flashy smile and empty promises. It was a Sunday in late August when everything imploded, the day before my final semester was set to begin. My parents called a family meeting in our living room. The air conditioning was blasting, but Victor was sweating profusely as he stood next to my sister. I should have recognized it as nervousness, but I was too focused on the thick folder he was clutching. "Ryan," my father began, his voice unusually stern, "we need to discuss your college fund." I remember feeling confused. The fund had been untouchable, a sacred cow in our family finances. "What about it?" I asked. Victor stepped forward, spreading documents across our glass coffee table. "We've run the numbers," he said, trying to sound authoritative despite his trembling hands. Your parents' investment in my agri-tech venture could yield returns of over 2,000% in 18 months. The technology is revolutionary. He paused for effect. We're talking about completely transforming how organic farms track their produce from seed to store. I looked at the documents. They were glossy presentations full of buzzwords and exponential growth charts. The charts seemed to defy gravity, but what caught my eye was a contract already signed by my parents, transferring my entire college fund, close to $180,000, to something called Agri-Tech Solutions, LLC. You're investing my college fund? I stood up, my hand shaking. Without asking me? My mother reached for my hand. Honey, we're doing this for your future. Think about it. Instead of spending the money on tuition, we can triple or quadruple it before you even graduate. Victor has investors lined up from Silicon Valley. Those documents are fake, I interrupted, pointing at obvious inconsistencies in the paperwork. That Silicon Valley address? It's a UPS store, and these investor signatures? The names don't match any real venture capital partners. Lily burst into tears. Why do you always have to ruin everything? Victor is trying to help our family. I pulled out my laptop and opened a file I'd been building for months. He's a con man. Look, here's proof that he was involved in 3 different cryptocurrency scams. His real name isn't even Victor Morrison. It's Victor Malone. He's got outstanding warrants in Nevada for fraud. The room exploded. My sister screamed that I was lying. My mother started crying. But it was my father's reaction that shocked me most. His face turned purple with rage as he stood up. Get out, he said quietly. Dad, please just look at the evidence. Get out! He roared. How dare you try to destroy your sister's happiness with these lies? How dare you insult the man who's trying to secure all our futures? I won't let you do this, I said, standing my ground. I'm calling the police. That's when Victor's facade cracked. For just a moment, I saw real fear in his eyes before he schooled his features, wrapped an arm around my sister and said, Mr. Lee, I think Ryan needs some time to cool off. Maybe a break from the family would help him understand that his jealousy is destroying relationships. My father nodded. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. Don't bother coming back until you've grown up and can apologize to Victor and your sister. The college fund is in my name, I protested. You can't legally. Actually, my mother interrupted, her voice ice cold. We had it transferred to a family trust last month for tax purposes. It's no longer in your name. I looked at my sister, hoping to see some sympathy, but she was clinging to Victor, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. You've always been jealous that I found success and love while you hide behind your computers, she spat. 1 hour later, I stood on our driveway with a duffel bag containing some clothes, my laptop, and a few $100s I had in cash. My credit cards, all linked to my parents' accounts, had already been canceled. My phone buzzed with a text from the family lawyer, formally notifying me that I had been removed from all family trusts and accounts. As I walked away from the only home I'd ever known, I heard Victor comforting my family. Don't worry. He'll come around once he sees how successful agri-tech becomes. Some people just can't handle watching others succeed. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. I couldn't have imagined that in less than a year, Victor would vanish with millions of my parents' money, leaving my sister a devastated single mother-to-be and my parents on the brink of bankruptcy. All I knew was that I had just lost everything because I tried to protect my family from a con man who had mastered the art of telling people exactly what they wanted to hear. The first few weeks after being kicked out were a blur of cheap motels and desperate phone calls. My Cornell friends were still on summer break, scattered across the country. My relatives chose loyalty to my parents over helping their ungrateful nephew. I had exactly $642 to my name and a laptop that was worth maybe $800 if I sold it, which I couldn't because it was my only tool for finding work. I ended up in a youth hostel in Trenton, sharing a room with 3 other guys and frantically applying for every programming job I could find. The partial scholarship I had wouldn't cover even a quarter of Cornell's tuition, and student loans were out of the question without a cosigner. My perfect GPA and promising future had evaporated like morning dew. But sometimes rock bottom has a basement. 2 weeks into my stay at the hostel, I got food poisoning from a sketchy hot dog stand. While I was violently ill in a communal bathroom, someone stole my duffel bag containing most of my clothes. The hostel manager, a kind-faced woman named Teresa, found me sitting on the floor of the bathroom, laughing hysterically at the absurdity of my situation. That's when my luck finally turned, though not in any way I could have predicted. Teresa's son, Mateo, was a janitor at a small tech startup in Hoboken. When he heard about my situation, he mentioned it to his boss. Next thing I knew, I was interviewing for a junior developer position with the CTO of Dataflow Solutions, wearing borrowed clothes and trying not to look as desperate as I felt. The CTO, Olivia Martinez, was unlike anyone I'd met in the corporate world. She wore jeans and spoke frankly. "Look, your code samples are excellent, but you're obviously going through some shit," she said bluntly. "I've been there. I built this company after my ex-husband left me with nothing but debt and a restraining order. Here's the deal. I'll give you a job, but you have to finish your degree. We'll work around your class schedule, and you can use our office to study. The pay is not great, but it comes with health insurance and stock options." I started crying right there in her office. She pretended not to notice and showed me to my desk. The next few months were brutal. I took a leave of absence from Cornell and moved into a tiny room in Mateo's apartment. During the day, I coded for Dataflow, learning more in 3 months than I had in 3 years of college. At night, I took online classes through a state university, slowly rebuilding my education fund dollar by dollar. I didn't hear much from my family during this time, but what I did hear wasn't good. Victor's business was supposedly booming, according to my sister's increasingly smug social media posts. She got married in a lavish ceremony I wasn't invited to. My parents invested even more money in agri-tech, remortgaging their house to become platinum tier investors. The only person who kept in touch was my mother's sister, Aunt Claire. She was the black sheep of the family, a community college professor who had never approved of my parents' materialistic lifestyle. Every Sunday, she called to check on me and slipped me updates about the family, though I pretended not to care. "Your sister's pregnant," she told me one Sunday, about 8 months after I'd been kicked out. "And something's not right with Victor's business. Your father tried to withdraw some profits to pay for the baby's nursery, but Victor keeps making excuses. Claire thinks he's stalling." I wanted to say, "I told you so," but the words tasted like ash in my mouth. Instead, I buried myself deeper in work. Dataflow was taking off. Our data analytics platform was attracting major clients, and my stock options were starting to look like they might actually be worth something. Then came the call that changed everything again. It was 3 a.m., and my sister was hysterical on the other end of the line. "He's gone," she sobbed. "Victor's gone, and so is everything else." I sat up in my small bed, already knowing what she meant, but needing to hear it anyway. "What do you mean gone?" "He cleaned out all the accounts last night. Agri-tech, our joint accounts, even his life insurance policy. He left a note saying he's sorry, but the market crashed and he had to protect our investments. He's probably in another country by now." Her voice broke. "I'm 7 months pregnant, Ryan. What am I going to do?" I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing but a deep, hollow ache as I listened to my sister's world crumble around her. But I had no idea that this was just a prelude to an even more bizarre turn of events, one that would force me to choose between revenge and redemption. The full extent of Victor's devastation became clear over the next few weeks. He hadn't just taken my college fund and my parents' investments. He had orchestrated a scheme that would have made Bernie Madoff proud. Through agri-tech, he'd managed to convince dozens of other wealthy families to invest their savings. My parents, eager to prove their son-in-law's legitimacy, had become unwitting accomplices, hosting dinner parties where Victor charmed their friends into investing millions. The FBI showed up at my parents' house on a Tuesday morning. They weren't there to arrest anyone yet, but the questions they asked painted a grim picture. Victor Malone, alias Morrison, alias Matthews, alias half a dozen other names, had disappeared with approximately $14 million. The revolutionary blockchain technology had never existed. The Silicon Valley office was a mailbox. The prestigious investors were paid actors. Even Victor's accent was fake. He'd apparently spent years perfecting it after growing up in a small town in Missouri. But the real shock came when they discovered my sister was actually his fourth wife. The others, scattered across different states, had similar stories. Charming man, brilliant business ideas, disappeared with their money. He hadn't bothered divorcing any of them before marrying Lily, making their marriage legally void. My pregnant sister wasn't just bankrupt, she was never even legally married. I learned all this from Aunt Claire, who had taken Lily in after she couldn't face staying in our parents' house anymore. My mother had taken to her bed with nervous exhaustion, while my father spent his days meeting with lawyers, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of their finances. The family home went first. The bank foreclosed after they missed 3 mortgage payments. Their retirement accounts had been emptied to fund agri-tech. My father's partners at the real estate firm asked him to resign to avoid scandal. My mother's law clients disappeared overnight. No one wanted to work with people who had vouched for such an obvious fraud. I watched it all from a distance, through Aunt Claire's updates and occasional local news reports. Illinois family falls victim to multi-million-dollar crypto scam, read one headline. Another called my parents sophisticated marks, who had facilitated the largest investment fraud in county history. Then came the lawsuits. Their friends, former friends now, wanted their money back. They claimed my parents must have known about the fraud, must have been in on it. After all, what kind of parents would invest their son's college fund in such an obvious scam? The lawsuits painted them as either criminals or fools, and I wasn't sure which description hurt them more. One night, about 2 months after Victor's disappearance, I got another late-night call. This time it was my father, and he was drunk. "Remember that time," he slurred, "when you were 10 and you wanted to build a treehouse? I told you we'd do it together, but I was always too busy. Always working, always chasing the next big deal. Should have built that damn treehouse." I didn't know what to say. This was the first time he'd spoken to me in over a year. "You were right," he continued, "about everything. About Victor, about the money, about us. We chose a stranger over our own son. We threw you out because you told us the truth we didn't want to hear. What kind of father does that?" I listened to him cry for a while before he hung up. The next day, he checked himself into the hospital with chest pains. The doctors called it stress-induced cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Meanwhile, my own life had taken an unexpected turn. Dataflow had been acquired by a major tech company. My stock options were suddenly worth real money, not millions, but enough to make me think twice about my next moves. Olivia, my boss, had insisted I take a significant role in the merged company, complete with a salary that my younger self couldn't have imagined. I was finally stable, finally rebuilding my life. I had a nice apartment, a growing savings account, and a career on the rise. I should have been happy to leave my family's drama behind. Then Aunt Claire sent me a photo of my sister's ultrasound. I was going to be an uncle, and despite everything, despite all the pain and betrayal, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to be dragged back into the mess I tried so hard to escape. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with the Lee family drama, because what happened next would force me to confront not just my family's mistakes, but my own capacity for forgiveness or revenge. I hadn't planned on getting involved. I really hadn't. But then my sister went into premature labor at 32 weeks, and something in me snapped. Maybe it was the photo Aunt Claire sent me of Lily in the hospital bed, looking so young and scared. Or maybe it was learning that my parents couldn't even afford to pay for her medical care. They'd lost their health insurance when my father had to resign from his firm. I found myself driving to Northwestern Memorial Hospital at midnight, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The baby, a boy, was in the NICU fighting for his life. He weighed just over 3 pounds and needed specialized care that would cost more than my sister's defunct joint bank account had ever held. When I walked into the hospital room, Lily burst into tears. She looked nothing like the smug, confident woman who had watched me get thrown out of our family home. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a worn hospital gown. Her carefully maintained highlights had grown out, showing mousy brown roots. "I'm so sorry," she whispered over and over. "You tried to warn us. You tried to save us from him." I sat beside her bed, not quite ready to forgive, but not able to hate her either. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning, no more lies." The story she told made me want to punch something. Victor had been planning his exit for months. He'd convinced my parents to invest not just my college fund, but also their retirement savings, their home equity, and even money borrowed from friends. The total amount they'd lost, including the loans they'd taken out, was close to $3 million. They were drowning in debt, facing multiple lawsuits, and had no way to pay for their grandson's medical care. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what Lily told me next. "He's still out there," she said, her voice shaking. "He's in Colombia. I know because he's still posting on Instagram under a fake account. He's using a different name, but I'd recognize his hands anywhere. He has that weird scar on his right thumb from when he tried to teach me to cook." I pulled out my laptop right there in the hospital room. Within an hour, I found his account. Victor, now calling himself Vincent Matthews, was indeed living it up in Colombia, posting photos of beachfront properties and expensive cars. He was even running a new scam, targeting wealthy expats with a revolutionary sustainable tourism venture. The rage I felt in that moment was unlike anything I'd experienced before. This man had destroyed my family, stolen my education, and was now living in luxury while his premature son fought for life in an incubator. The unfairness of it all made me physically sick. That's when Olivia called. I'd been so caught up in the family drama that I'd missed 3 important meetings. But instead of firing me, she listened to the whole story. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You know," she said finally, "before I built Dataflow, I worked in forensic accounting. Specifically, I tracked down people who didn't want to be found, and I still have some contacts in that world." "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "I'm suggesting that maybe it's time for some cosmic justice. I can put you in touch with people who might be interested in Victor's current activities, people who have the resources to make his life very uncomfortable." I looked at my sister, pale and broken in her hospital bed, at my nephew, tiny and vulnerable in his incubator, and thought about the text from Aunt Claire about my father's deteriorating health and my mother's deepening depression. "I'll need a week off work," I said. "Take 2, Olivia replied. "And Ryan, be careful. Men like Victor, they're dangerous when cornered." I had no idea then just how right she was, because the plan I was about to set in motion would either save my family or destroy what little we had left. Olivia's contacts turned out to be a fascinating mix of former intelligence operatives, ethical hackers, and forensic accountants who specialized in asset recovery. Within days, they built a complete picture of Victor's new life in Colombia. He was living in a beachfront villa near Cartagena, dating a local politician's daughter, and preparing to launch his new scam under the business name Eco Ventures Global. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: my sister. Between visits to the NICU, she remembered something crucial. During their marriage, Victor had been obsessed with a particular painting, an original Basquiat he claimed was his family heirloom. He kept it in a special climate-controlled room and refused to let anyone touch it. Lily had always assumed it was fake, like everything else about him. It wasn't fake. Olivia's art expert contact confirmed that the painting visible in the background of one of Victor's Instagram photos was a genuine Basquiat worth approximately $40 million. This wasn't just Victor's prized possession. It was stolen property, taken from a Chicago gallery 5 years ago. The FBI had been looking for it ever since. The plan came together like a perfect storm. One anonymous tip to the Colombian authorities about stolen art. One well-timed leak to Victor's new girlfriend's father about his true identity. One carefully orchestrated expose in the local press about his previous scams. And finally, one anonymous email to Victor himself containing proof that we knew exactly where he was and what he'd done. I watched through a sophisticated monitoring system as Victor's carefully constructed new life imploded. His girlfriend's father, a prominent local judge, publicly denounced him. His business partners backed out. The authorities raided his villa looking for the painting. His bank accounts, including the ones he thought were secret, were frozen. But Victor had one last card to play. At 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, my phone rang. It was a video call from an unknown number. "Hello, brother-in-law." Victor's familiar, smooth voice came through. He looked different, tanned, somewhat leaner, but still wearing that practiced smile. "Impressive work. Did you really think I wouldn't figure out it was you?" "Where's the money, Victor?" I demanded. He laughed. "Safe, very safe. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off your dogs, or I'm going to release some very interesting documents showing how your parents helped me convince their friends to invest. Emails, recorded conversations, signed documents, enough to send them to prison for conspiracy to commit fraud." My blood ran cold. "They were innocent. You manipulated them." "Try proving that in court," he sneered. "Your father's signature is on all the investment documents. Your mother's voice is on recordings promoting agri-tech to her clients. Face it, Ryan, you can't win this one." I was silent for a long moment. Then I said, "Check your email." He frowned, picking up another phone. I watched his face change as he read the message I had just sent. "That's a complete record of every transaction you've made in the past 5 years. Bank accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, shell companies, everything. If anything happens to my parents, if those documents ever see the light of day, this goes to every law enforcement agency in the world. Your choice, Victor." The practiced smile faltered. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "You've gotten better at this game," he said quietly. "I had a good teacher. You taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about having the power to do it and choosing not to. So here was my offer. What I said next would change everything, not just for Victor, but for my entire family. Because sometimes the most powerful moves in life aren't about winning or losing, but about finding a way to turn an enemy's strength into their greatest weakness. The deal I offered Victor was simple. Return 80% of the stolen money, and the evidence against my parents stays buried. He could keep the remaining 20%, enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly, as long as he signed a confession absolving my parents of any wrongdoing and disappeared permanently. If he ever tried to run another scam or contacted my family again, everything would be released. "Why not turn me in?" he asked, suspicious. "Why offer me anything?" "Because my nephew needs surgery. My parents need to rebuild their lives. And your other victims need their money back more than they need to see you in prison," I replied. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for them." He agreed. Of course he agreed. Men like Victor always choose survival over pride. That's how I ended up in my current office, watching my parents squirm in their chairs. The money had been returned. Not all of it, but enough. Their friends' lawsuits were settled. The house was still gone, but the debts were paid. My father's heart condition had improved with a reduction in stress, and my mother had started seeing a therapist. "We don't deserve your help," my mother said quietly, staring at her hands. "After what we did to you." "No, you don't," I agreed. "But family is family, even when they're wrong, even when they hurt you." My father looked up, his eyes wet. "We can never make it right." "No," I said, "you can't. But you can do better from now on, starting with your grandson." My nephew was home from the hospital now, growing stronger every day. Lily had moved in with Aunt Claire permanently, taking online classes to finally finish her degree. She was studying accounting of all things, determined to understand the financial world that had been used to deceive her. I pulled out 3 documents and placed them on the desk. "These are your options," I explained. "The first is a job offer. Entry-level positions at Dataflow. Dad, you're good with numbers, and Mom, you're good with people. Olivia's willing to give you a chance. The second is enrollment information for a financial literacy program I want you both to take. The third is a restraining order against Victor, which you need to sign." They signed all 3 without hesitation. As they stood to leave, my father turned back. "That tree house," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know it's too late now, but I'd like to build one for my grandson if you'd help me." I thought about all the pain, all the betrayal, all the nights I'd spent wondering how my own parents could choose a stranger over their son. Then I thought about my nephew, who deserved better than a family broken by old wounds. "Next weekend," I said. "We'll start next weekend." After they left, I sat in my office looking out over Chicago. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Dinner tonight? The team wants to celebrate the Henderson contract." I smiled. Life had moved on. I had a family at Dataflow now too, one I'd chosen, one that had chosen me back when I had nothing to offer but determination and raw talent. Later that evening, as I sat with my colleagues celebrating our latest success, I received one final email from an anonymous account. It was Victor, sending proof that he'd left the country for good. Attached was a photo of the Basquiat painting being returned to its rightful owners. "You won," he wrote. "Take care of them." I deleted the email without replying. Some victories don't need acknowledgement. Sometimes being right isn't as important as being wise. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something better from the ashes of what was lost. My phone buzzed again. It was Aunt Claire sending a photo of my nephew's first smile. Below it, she'd written, "He has your eyes and your stubborn chin." I saved the photo and put my phone away. Tomorrow, I'd start designing the treehouse. It was time to build something new.